All right, we're live. Episode 9. I got a good start to this. So I was just with my family, and my brother, he plays golf, and he brought up he wants help over the off season gaining speed in his swing. Okay. So this is the start of the conversation. So we talked about this for a little bit. He doesn't lift weights or anything, but he plays golf all the time in the summer. And he, pretty good, but he wants to hit it farther. So he talked to me about what he needs to do from basically now, because now weather gets bad, so he won't play anymore. So he wants to figure out what he can do between like now and like April, May to gain speed with his swing, because he doesn't hit it very far. So we talked through like a few things, like I just talked about, like just some basic stuff he can do, but he was adamant that I was wrong and wanting to keep the training general, because I just talked to him about like doing, basic like body weight stuff first, and like squatting, pressing, hinging, the stuff like that. But he said that there has to be something that he can do that is just for swing speed. So,
so
this is the topic.
There's like everything else in the fucking world.
Yeah.
Blue pill. There's a magic blue pill that makes you swing the club fast.
Yeah. So we got basically an argument about, not an argument, but we talked about it, and I was like, because it's like, this is and I'm like, to us, like, we're kind of in the space, so we know that it's an issue, like this sports specificity topic. But he was adamant on like, well, no, I don't want to do, just whatever. I want to do something that, like he said, he goes, if I came to you as a private client and I said I have to gain 10 miles per hour of club head speed, what would you give me? And I told him, I said, I would give you the same thing that I would give a basketball player that wants to jump higher, and I would give you the same thing as a baseball player that wants to sprint faster. Like, I would give them all basically the same thing. But I think we should talk a little bit about this and just like discuss kind of our thoughts on like sports specificity from each of our angles, and how to deal with like that sort of thing, because none of us are in like private training fully. So it's just interesting to think about like what people are thinking.
Which this is your youngest brother?
No, the middle brother.
Okay.
And I told him, I said, listen, like,
well, neither one of them ever trained before, right? Your brothers?
He did a little bit, because he played like high school sports. Then he went to college to play golf, and they trained a little bit. But again, it was like the high school was kind of whatever, but then like college, it was like CrossFit based. So he's never like actually done just like normal. Like, I asked him, I was like, can you get on the floor right now and do 10 push-ups? Like, could you hang from the bar and do 5 pull-ups? And he's like, I don't know. And he did the push-ups. Like, I won't. But like the pull-ups, I don't know if he could, it's like just basic
in
stuff.
In the last 3 years, has he seen the inside of a weight room?
Oh, no.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't, but I think that's like the way he talked about it. It's like, that is real. Like he said, he brought up like, hey, well, I saw, like Bryson, who's a PGA, or not PGA Tour, but he's a professional player. And he's like, he's doing this like swing machine that's like a resisted swing. And I'm like, no. And the reason that this conversation started is because he asked me what my opinion was on, it's called like the stack system or something for golf. And it's basically like a weighted club program. So it's like weighted baseballs, stuff like that. And I was like, no, that's a terrible idea. He's like, no, like this guy gained a bunch of miles per hour on it. I'm like, yeah, of course he did. And so did this guy. Like, and so did the other guy that they paid $10 million to say that. But like, he was talking about like a weighted club. And I was like, that's a terrible idea. I think it's a terrible idea. But I don't know. I just think it's worth talking about this a little bit and maybe trying to clarify. Oh no. Where'd Logan go?
I don't know.
Well, what do you think about it? Or what are your initial thoughts?
Initial thoughts?
Yeah, like I don't know. I just think it would be helpful to clarify why, like when people get, because I think like people like us, like we get frustrated on those things and we're just like, oh, that's so stupid. But it's like, well, how could we explain it,
So if I had to take someone that didn't understand like our point of view on it, I would be like, okay, so I would ask them like specific, like what makes you swing the club faster? Right. And then I would kind of go like, it would be how much force you can push into the ground. And then obviously there's a whole kinetic chain that they have to deal with that goes to their hands and everything. But, it starts with the amount of force they can push into the ground and use their hips with, basically. So I'd be like, if the amount of force you produce in your lower body isn't sufficient to like hit the ball as far as you want to, like that's where I would start.
Right. So what, but
And,
what does that
to
mean?
do
Like,
that,
what are you saying?
so if you're looking at force, so if someone listening doesn't know what force is, mass times acceleration, I'm going to hit the mass part. So we're going to lift weights. We won't jump into like super heavy mass right away, but
Yeah, you mean like weight on the bar, right?
yeah,
Right.
so I'm not going to make you lift heavy right away, but I'm going to do something that will increase your capacity to be able to lift heavy, so that when you've trained properly and intelligently for a little bit of time, you can hit a weight or amount of force that you haven't previously hit. And if during that time you're still, I would assume if you're still playing your sport or doing whatever the skill work that's needed, like you will probably be able to swing the club faster just by the amount of force you can produce. And then not even to mention the tax that you put on the central nervous system and what the central nervous system can do after training as well.
Right.
Because that's part of the force production too. But I would just kind of try to lay it out as basic as I can and be like, this is what your swing speed is from, and this is the things that we're going to train. And then I'd be like, it'd be the same thing as I do for someone else that needs to put force into the ground, use their hips, rotate, be able to rotate and anti-rotate in their core, let all of that momentum go into their hands, whatever it is. So I would just kind of explain as basically as I could, like, this is what it is. And then they'll be like, well, that just seems like general training. And I'd be like, yeah,
right.
kind of.
Yeah. And like a lot of times I think, and I think that a lot of people, they just don't want to hear that, because I told him, I was like, well, like, you're not going to be able to squat tomorrow and then hit it 5 yards further on Friday. Like, it's going to, you have, like you said, it's like, you want to, you have to show up. And like I told him, it's like, what I would have you do, you wouldn't want to do. Like, you would do 3 or 4 lifts a day. You'd start super light, hopefully don't get sore at all. And then you just go from there. Like, once it gets easier, you start adding weight, and then hopefully you get stronger over time. And then, a year, 2, 3 down the road, then you're hitting it farther. But that's not the answer that people want to hear. Like,
yeah, I bet the weighted club would really kind of screw your back up.
Well, I told him, like, a lot of people, with the whole weighted, unweighted implement thing, like, they say that's like the sure way to screw things up, because the competition weight is, the
Wouldn't
normal.
that screw up the feel of the swing too?
Yeah, like, that's the complaint on weighted balls. Like, you're changing, like, if baseball is played with this ball that weighs whatever, I don't know what it is, but you're practicing and, experimenting with heavier and lighter balls, you're altering like the one thing that is the sport. Same with golf. It's like, his 7-iron weighs this amount, but if you take a heavy, lighter object and you're swinging it, it's going to screw up some part of it, like the form, like in golf, like takeaway, all those things. Like, it's so, like, especially sports like that, like the baseballs and golf and stuff, like, you're messing with like the very fine motor skills that you've built up over 2 decades, just trying to get like speed, which, like, it's the same. It's like a basketball player, if they want to shoot better from farther, isn't going to shoot a medicine ball, like, like, to build up the speed, to get the ball out farther or faster. But I don't know. Like, I just think it's way too easy now, like, to see those things and to want to like just have that and, oh yeah, I'll just do this and then switch and whatever, and it'll be better. But I don't know. It's just a lot more patience is required, I think, and to just understand that you have to do just real basic stuff.
Yeah.
We were just continuing on, Logan.
Sorry, I have unstable internet right now.
Utah.
It's Xfinity. I switched over my mobile hotspot, so we should be good for now.
Okay.
Squat heavy.
Do you have thoughts on, like, Nick just talked about, like, the need to like start training, build a capacity up to be able to lift heavier, and then the nervous system down the way, which,
I mean, the thing was specificity. Like, it's another one of those coined words, right? That I don't know, we started hearing like a decade ago for, I don't know, like I said earlier, it's like they want the magic exercise,
right,
that make them jump 4 inches higher and hit the ball 100 yards further. Like, that's what they want. That's what everybody wants. But that doesn't exist. Like, that exist. But what I will say about specificity, if you're like a highly trained individual at the very top of what I would consider like your sport. So if you're a professional, then there is definitely some specificity that comes into play. I do think that. And to whether we're talking about, like, if we're just talking about jumping, right? Well, let's say you're really an elastic type of jumper, but you lack strength. Like, well, we can change how we do your plyometrics to cater to that need, right? We don't need to be doing a bunch of really elastic plyos if you're already good at those things, right? And if this is going to help us, if changing the way we do those plyos to be more strength oriented, well, if that's going to help us play through contact on the floor, well, then why that's specific to that person for that particular sport. But even there,
yeah,
that's so general to me, that's still general,
right?
It's like, we're training the tendons or the tissue in specific ways to help with a specific thing, but it's not sport specific to basketball. I mean, if you were a football player and had the same issue, I would train you the exact same way.
Right.
Well, physiology and anatomy are the same, whether you're a swimmer or you're a, baseball player. So
right.
if that's the approach we're taking is when we're talking about specificity, well, then, that's kind of where that all lies, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, I think that's the thing, because I think it's like the training might be specific to the individual, but the components of training, the lifts, the exercises, you're not going to change those based on the sport. Like, I think people think that, oh, if I play golf, I should be doing these exercises. Like, I should be, swinging or like doing rotating or whatever it might be. But then if you play like basketball, well, okay, then I need to do more like, this exercise, that exercise. Like, the exercises aren't changing to the sport. It's like, yeah, like he asked me, well, what did you do like when you had teams? It's like, well, the training was all individualized. So you could say it was all specific, but everybody did the same program, but all the loads were individualized. So then you could say it's specific to the individual. But the concept and idea of like, oh, golfers and tennis players should be doing medicine ball throws, rotationally because they do that in their sport, and basketball players don't, so they shouldn't, and football players should do more leg press and blah, blah, blah. Like, it's all, like you said, it's like, yeah, you might get specific with like little changes to the program that you're doing, but you're not changing programs because you're not changing, like, overhauling the program because it's a different sport. I don't know. That's the thing that I think is confusing too, though.
Right. Well, and whenever development is a huge piece and is needed in order for you to accomplish the goal of your sport, well, that makes the training even more general, in my opinion. Like, you can go back to more basic type of things and still elicit adaptation.
Right.
Like, I mean, I had a strength coach tell me one time, like, they were doing, goblet squats and single arm overhead press. And they were doing it for like 3 weeks. And he's like, if I'm still getting adaptation here, I'm going to stay right here and get my adaptation. Like, before I progress on. Oh. And, like, even like we talked about some tennis stuff a few weeks ago, with, I sent you guys that text message. I mean, if we're talking about the elite of the elite, right? And like, let's take tennis for example,
which is very few. Sorry,
we're talking about top 1%. Playing at Wimbledon, we're going for a Grand Slam, whatever it might be. If we're talking about that type of person, well, yeah, you mean you probably don't need to be doing hang cleans and back squats.
But see, here's my rebuttal to that. I think, but like, when you see those people, if they train a lot, they're usually the ones that are doing that kind of stuff. Like,
they probably are.
Like Rory McIlroy. I told him this. I was like, listen, what does Rory McIlroy do? One of the best players in the world. Like, he has the squat bar loaded up. Why would you need anything different? Like, if the best player in the world who hits it 350 yards is squatting, why, I don't know. I just think that, I don't know. That point too, though, like not rushing the process of developing. There was a tweet that I saw, which Twitter, whatever, but it was like a guy put up something about like, it was like 8th graders and they were doing dynamic effort bench with bands. And somebody commented was like, what is this? Like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, like the kids seem to like it. So to each their own. It's like, no, that is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. But like, because again, like those are specific, like those are down the line of adaptation. It's like, if a kid doesn't need that to continue getting stronger and faster, then do not use it. You know, like it's like you want to milk, like, well, if they're getting better doing goblet squats, well, then we're going to continue doing goblet squats. So I don't have an answer on how long we're doing them. Like you said, it's like, I want to keep doing it until I have to move on. Because once you move on, you can't go back.
Right.
What do you think, Nick?
Which part?
I don't know.
Hey, hammer the basics, man. You can still get dudes that are like 3-4 years into college and still do the whatever it is during the off season and not do tempos, not do dynamic effort, max effort, like, and just go lower weight, higher rep for a cycle or two, and then gradually go to higher weights and lower reps, and it's still going to work.
Right.
You can go ultimate linear programming and it's still going to work for some guys. So if it's going to work, why not use it?
Did you guys listen to that podcast I sent you?
Cal's?
Yeah.
I haven't yet. No.
That's where, like, I agree with you. Nick. That does work. That works. And it's probably going to work for almost everyone. Like, even your highest trained guy is going to see some positive change.
Right.
But then again, back to our specificity topic here, like, we can adjust the training to be, again, specific to the athlete in those types of areas as well. Whether we're talking about speed, power, strength, hypertrophy, capacity, whatever it is, like whatever you think that they need, you can train them specifically in that regard, but not necessarily have the specificity thing. I think is where it's, when we talked about this a few times ago about social media, and like you got your coin deals and your exercises and whatever. That's like, I think that's what people think it is.
Right.
But we are pretty darn specific, just talking about periodization, not, just because, not necessarily an exact exercise, but just within periodization, we can be specific. And so that's what I always tell like our coaches and stuff. It's like, well, our 60-year guy who already squats the house and, does all this stuff, like, we're probably not going to add a bunch of strength to him this year. But what we can do is we can train in a very speed and power oriented, and his ability to produce force, we can increase that rate, and so we might train him a little different than I got my, incoming freshman. It's 18 years old and never seen a weight room before.
Right. But the general, like the structure of the program probably doesn't change a whole lot.
Doesn't change at all. And, back to what we were, however many episodes ago, we were talking about how to lay out a workout. Well, I mean, my layout's the exact same. My structure is the exact same. My annual plan is the exact same. Like, in terms of the like greater view of the annual plan, here's where I need to be my best.
Right.
Here's where I'm going to evaluate where they are.
And from a movement by day standpoint too.
Correct. But what I do leading into those timeframes might be different than with my 60-year guy versus my first-year guy, or it might be different with my 10-year pro versus my, second year college guy. It's going to be different, but I mean, the staples are all still there. We're still going to push. We're still going to pull. We're still going to hinge. We're still going to do hard things.
Right. Well, I think a lot of people, they want to skip the part of getting, like you said, well, my one guy who's super strong. It's like, yeah, but most people want to skip the whole part that, this one person did for the past 15 years to get to that point. So I think a lot of people, they think they're advanced when they're not advanced, or they assume that they're advanced based on the skill in the sport. So if someone's a super good football player, like, oh yeah, he's advanced. Like, what do you have to make him better? It's like, well, Billy can't squat 315. So there is no advance in here for him. Like, there's no advance button that you can press because he's a good football player. You know what I mean? It's like, it's all based on what they can do in the weight room. You know, like if your best basketball player can't squat a 50-pound dumbbell, they aren't advanced in your world. They might be on the court, but they're not advanced in the weight room.
And that's a good point. And I actually, I had a conversation with another collegiate men's basketball strength coach earlier this year, and he was training some NBA guys like on the side, and he brought the guys in, and their people had telling like what he needs, right? He goes, well, I put him on a force plate and he can't produce any force. He cannot produce any force. He's extremely weak. And so he goes, so what do we do? Well, developmental 0. Here we go.
Because that's learning how to produce force.
That's where you are in training.
Right. I think that's a hard thing, I think, to understand, because it usually means you have to do way more simple stuff than you'd want, or that other people want too. So it's like, as a coach, do you know your stuff well enough to be able to back up and, start them way down here on the continuum of like beginner to advanced, and like how you progress and load, what you're doing for frequency, things like that. But yeah, that's a hard thing, I think, to get, especially now, where you basically have 2 years to market yourself before bad things happen.
Right. I will say, you see, I don't know if you guys follow any like private sector guys.
Yeah.
There's obviously several in the NBA world that, I would assume it's across all professional sports. Like these guys play their season and then they have their trainer on the side. Right. A lot of those guys talk about training specifically for that particular athlete. But if you see what they're doing, the good ones, if you see what they're doing, it's nothing out of this world that it's just like, oh my gosh, like I've never seen that before. It's not. It's basic stuff used specifically for that athlete. So like in the case of your brother, you know what I'm saying? Like in the case of your brother, it's like, okay, you want to do this, you want to increase your swing speed, but specifically for you, these are the things that you need in order to accomplish that.
Based on where you are.
Correct. Based on where you are.
Well, I told him too, I'm like, listen, for me, like I have the benefit now where my salary isn't tied to marketing my plan. So I was like, you could walk into a gym, a private gym, or I don't know, not private, but like you could walk into a gym and say, hey, I need to gain 10 yards of swing speed. Do you think they're going to tell you that they don't have a program that's specifically for the swing speed? No, it's a business. I don't have to say that. I was like, well, I would give you the same program that I give everybody else because I don't have to do it based on my job. But I was like, but other people will tell you that. So that's the hard part. It's like being able to filter through that and like figure out what it is. But this is an area that not many people understand. So it's hard to like get that.
But you could have also given him a program and just had cable chops or something in there. Right. Said, oh, this is exactly what I would do. This is exactly what I did with golf, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
This is exactly what happened. And they drink the Kool-Aid.
Right. And see, I'm just not big on
maybe your brother
fluffing
would,
it up.
But yeah. I mean,
you're right.
You can give them exactly what you want.
Right.
If you can sell it.
Right.
Heck, that's what we coaches anyway.
Any more thoughts on specificity, Nick?
Not really. I just think I was just going to touch on what Logan kind of just touched on and just say, if anyone's trying to tell you they have the specific recipe for whatever you're trying to accomplish, they're full of shit. Because it's general stuff. There's no secret program. There's no secret exercise, like he said. It's just kind of a gradual thing that you have to work towards, but nobody wants to do it for years to get the result.
To follow that, it's like I told him like about myself as an example. I was like, I can go play now and hit it 30 yards farther than I did when I was playing every day in college. And I told him, I was like, how can that be? I don't play anymore. Like I don't practice. I don't work on my swing in the winter. I don't care. but all I do is lift weights. And it's like, and I don't do anything specific to anything, and I mean that, that's just a weird, but yeah, like you said, that's 15 years of just, and I'm not strong, but it's like, it's just the process of like going through that and like not trying to find a secret answer to golf distance that helped with golf distance. Like, I don't know. It's an interesting topic. We could probably talk more on it.
Yeah. I do think one thing that kind of leads to people getting caught up in numbers and stuff is like most of, like Logan described, like one of the cases of like a super elastic athlete that doesn't really produce force very well or something. And so what do you got to do? You got to make them stronger and allow them to produce more force. But that's the case for 95+% of young athletes who have a low training age.
Right.
It's just like their body and like their system has to learn how to produce more force to be able to do things athletically. So the answer is to like take them through that developmental or strength phase, whatever it is, to show them how to produce more force. And then people get caught up in like, oh, now we're strong and we've gotten better at this adaptation that you're trying to chase. So like now we just need to do more of it. And so they just keep chasing the same rabbit without actually knowing that they needed to switch to a different adaptation or something like that. Right. So I think you just have to be mindful of what you're actually trying to accomplish with that specific individual. And then if it needs changing, it needs changing, and don't hold on to something too tight.
Yeah. And to clarify too, like we're talking about like beginner type training, like, and I think we'd all agree, like beginners, and I think now more than ever, a lot of people haven't gone through the process of just like adding, like we talked about some of this stuff before, but like adding 5 pounds a week to your squat or 10 pounds a week to your squat and just figuring out like where you're at. Because I think a lot of people, they don't know where they're at. Like, it's like if you ask somebody, what can you squat or bench or deadlift from the floor, like they don't know where they're at, like, or they've never gone through a process of like how many high schools put kids through 60 weeks of linear progression where they add weight slowly and let the body adapt and figure out where it's at. Because if you haven't done that, then you don't really know where you're at. And then all the advanced type stuff, it doesn't matter. Like there's nothing that matters unless you figure out where that stuff's at and master your body weight and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Good on specificity, Logan?
I mean, no.
Perfect.
But
yeah, I mean, yeah.
But yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I was going to I was looking through one of my old phones the other day, and I had pictures on there, but I took a bunch of screenshots of old emails, and one of the emails said, it was addressed to me. Obviously, he said this person hurt his back doing cleans in the weight room, and so he goes, we need to really reevaluate our programming. I believe the email was sent like, I don't know, August 30th or something. So it'd been the first week of school. The kid,
it probably was your fault, but yeah, go on.
The kid he was talking about was a freshman, and I'm pretty sure we were doing clean technique with the bar, and that's all the more we did. But if I remember correctly, this kid was like super highly touted, was also super lazy, and
that's weird. That's a weird combination. I don't think I've seen that before.
Did not want to train ever, right? And
but this is the game. Like this is part of the game, like
yeah. But more or less, I believe my meeting with that coach then became like, well, it needs to be more specific. It needs to be more specific for this athlete. Well, the problem was that all the athlete really needed was basic strength, because he couldn't freaking walk across the room without falling over. Like that's how weak he was. Yeah, he could hit the heck out of the ball, but that's what his issue was.
Right.
in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I was wrong, but that coach let him just do whatever he wanted, and ended up serving him to be really, really bad because the kid got in trouble with a bunch of stuff outside of school. He failed out of classes. Like, he ended up being a really bad asset.
See, but I think this is where the disagreement comes in, is because then it's just told that like we as strength and conditioning, well, yeah, but you guys just quantify strength as like squat, bench, and deadlift. And this is where like I don't know of a bridge in between this, because I don't know that they're, but we see strength as like, well, they can't squat this. And then it's like, well, all those guys, or all those people care about is numbers on the bar. So that's kind of just how they define strength. And it's like, to each their own, we'll just disagree. And it's like, yeah, and I mean, and part of it is like, yeah, that is the reality, because that's kind of how, I don't know, that's the hard thing. Cause that's where there's like no bridge like that. He says it needs to be more specific. You say he's not strong. And it's like, well, now what?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's just one of the challenges of like the relationships in the job,
Well, I mean, and I think we talked about this too. And I keep bringing this, we kind of start talking about the private sector and like clients and stuff. But even if you bring it back to the college level and you talk to a sport coach and they're like, well, this isn't specific to my sport, plug in the sport, doesn't matter what it is.
Right.
But if you ask them, okay, what is specific to your sport? Explain to me what that is. They can't do that either. So, it comes on to us as like, hey, all you guys know is the weight room. You don't know anything about the sport. But then when we ask what's specific to the sport, they can't give me an answer. Or they say, make them longer and leaner. Well, what does that mean?
More stretching.
Like, muscle bone are the leanest things there are. Like, I don't know what you mean. And make them longer. I can't stretch them out.
Oh, I told you about the plane experience I had, didn't I? When I sat next to a dance coach.
No.
This lady told me, like, she asked what I did, and I told her, and she's like, oh, that's cool, but like for us, like we don't really like doing weightlifting. Like we have to make sure their muscles are long, or it was like long and lean, or like long and stretchy or something. I was like, oh yeah, like I don't have the magic pill for that one. So whatever.
Well, I told you about, I was getting interviewed one time and I had a coach ask me specifically about their sport, right? Well, their sport was, so to give you a context, I was in a room, a panel. It was in front of a huge panel. So it was like every head sport coach and some assistants were in this room. And I was at the front of the room and I was interviewing for the job. And I knew what sports I was going to work with. The particular sport that I was being asked about wasn't on the docket. So I wasn't overly concerned. But the sport they asked me about, there's not that many teams in the United States, or not that many universities in the United States that have this sport. So I'd never trained them before. I'd never been into school that had that sport before. And so my answer was, I knew XYZ person at these 3 different universities, and I need to contact them and discuss with them, like, what they do and all this stuff. But that answer wasn't good enough. They were looking for the coined words. They were looking for the long, lean, whatever, flexible. They were looking for those types of words.
Right.
I couldn't give that to them. I never trained that sport before. But my answer to be, I'm going to train them as specifically as possible for their sport, basically is what I was getting at, is I'm going to talk to other sports or other coaches in the profession that have trained those sports, understand the environment in which they're in, and the variables that go along with the sport, and then we'll train accordingly, like to specifically to the team that we have, whether we're too weak or not powerful enough or not flexible enough, whatever it is, I guess. And that wasn't good enough. So,
right.
Way to go. You screwed it up.
Nick, what are you thinking? You're always thinking something a little different.
About which part? What does that mean? I was thinking something a little different.
I don't know. I just feel like you usually have a unique angle on things.
Yeah.
We need to hear it.
Yeah. Which part though?
Well, the whole specificity part, because I mean, we can kind of wrap that up too.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I don't know, man. It's just a weird topic. But I will say, like, so private sector wise, like I don't work for like a huge private gym or anything like that, but I do train people privately. Um, and when they ask specificity or whatever, um, I kind of go into the fact I actually explain that like the most specific thing you can do for your sport is to practice and play your sport and work on the skills that are within your sport outside of the weight room.
Right.
And I tell them my job is to develop you athletically so that when you go into your skill work or scrimmaging your sport or whatever, you have the capacity to do things that you were unable to previously do. And so that's kind of where I go with specificity and just kind of try to connect like the most specific thing you can do, I can't help you with, which is on you. I can specifically help you with the athletic adaptations you need to be able to help you do things easier in the thing that you have to do specifically. And so once I kind of explain that to them, and then I explain like, this is what we'll do over here so that you're better over here. And then once I explain that and kind of connect the two dots for them, they kind of say, all right, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Granted, I don't have to really talk to coaches that often about it, but so that's the one thing.
Yeah. And like, as you two are both talking, it's like something I've thought about too. It's like our job as strength coaches, our job is to specify training to the individual, not the sport, and that doesn't really mean anything with like what your selection is, but it's like rehab. If somebody gets hurt, oh, we need this person back in this many weeks. Like, well, no, the process has to go through. It's just like development. It's like, well, we're training people, not basketball, football, softball, volleyball players. If that, I think if you look at it through that lens, it's a little bit different than trying to pick the right things for the right sport, because if you get tied up in that, I think it's a total disaster.
Yeah. I also think another thing is, like if you have an athlete coming from like someone who's been privileged enough to train privately and then go into college and they're training with a team and a strength coach that has to control the whole team. They might bring in like, oh, what this is like what my trainer did here. And I think sometimes they fail to understand the fact that like a personal, like if it's a good like private personal trainer, whatever it is, like even though they're really good in that sense, like they can still only do much in the coaching of a team in the college strength and conditioning realm. Like you can do other things because you might have like one or two clients you're working with and there's more freedom to do different, more complicated things if after you've built that base. Whereas in college strength and conditioning realm, like they have to control a whole team and worry about the flow of the room and worry about a dozen other things to make a whole team go through a lift. So they're not going to be able to do as crazy, difficult, technical, detailed things as like a private trainer is going to be able to do either, because they have to worry about 20 other individuals in the room at the same time. So that's one thing an athlete should probably bring in like to perspective too, and not say like, well, this is what we used to do. And it's like, well, the two situations are completely different. So you kind of need to understand that too.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Logan, anything else?
No.
Okay.
I mean,
well, that point on that you ended on there, that's something I thought, and I think we need to talk about that too, because it's like, now more than ever, it's how does a person, if you work for a college, how do you even manage that thing? And I think that this probably needs to be its own episode, but like if you have a team that trains all school year, whatever that is, August to May, but then people go off on their own in the summer, like that brings a whole nother, aspect into this deal too. If you've got a team of 15 that 10 of them go off on their own all summer and they come back and then they go off and they come back and go off, like that's a hard thing to manage,
Yeah. I was just thinking from like my own perspective, was like I'm personal training one person. I can do
Right.
completely different stuff than when I go and train my team that has 46 guys.
Right.
There's so much limited resources and space and time.
Yeah, because it's like as much as your job is to coach the people, like you're also managing a room and like logistically trying to coordinate who's going to be where and what time it's going to be and all those things too.
Yeah.
Right. But then on my side, like, okay, so you're personal training one of my kids, Nick.
Yeah.
Like, I know you. I know you're a good trainer, right? I know you're going to do what's right by that athlete and only going to progress them to the point in which they need to progress.
Yeah.
But if you're an incoming freshman and you're telling me, hey, I did, single leg cleans onto a BOSU ball last week with my personal trainer, why aren't we doing?
Why do you got to pick on my favorite exercises?
Vertical jump. I mean, like, I don't know who your personal trainer is, but I know that you play this position and you're 200 pounds weaker than everybody else in that position that's on my team.
Yeah.
On the team. So no, your deficiency isn't, we need to improve your single leg BOSU ball clean. Your deficiency is we need to improve your fundamental base strength.
Yeah.
It's none. So like, I mean, there again.
Yeah, true.
Like that's why the specificity thing is a vicious cycle. Like what Nick explained earlier when he's like, okay, I'm talking to a client or I'm talking to a coach and this is how I'm explaining it. You are exactly right. You're exactly right. But you know how many times I've explained that to some, and then
that's what I said. I don't have to really talk to coaches all the time.
No, but like in front of you, they agree with you. But consciously, they do not, because you hear about it 6 months later. It's like, it just wasn't specific enough.
It's like Coach O. That's why I was slow.
Like
he just
because you're right. The most specific thing you can do is play your sport. Sport. And what we're trying to do is build up that toolbox or build you a bigger engine to go out there and perform in that sport. And at its base it's general. Like it's all general.
Yeah. You're just opening up a can of worms, man.
But that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm saying like the specificity thing will never die and we can never move on because it's just this, it just keeps coming back. It's always going to come back. Always.
Yeah.
We should name ourselves the strength generalists.
Yeah, we're gonna have to shut this thing off because they're gonna be out here all night.
But like strength isn't general, or like you could.
It's because it's been so demonized. Like, this school, they only lift heavy weights and they're slow. And again, it's all into this nasty cycle of if they win, you're a hero by association. If you lose, you're the worst thing ever by association. And that's where I think a lot of this has gotten twisted because, 10 years ago, if like this team was doing super well and this is how they train, well, that's the best way to do it. And if they lose, well, now they're all morons and they train like a bunch of idiots. And so like, it's all like this results, wins and losses oriented deal,
Right.
So
just like
I don't know.
Go ahead.
If a team wins, it's like if I coach a team and we win and I do nothing besides handstands and splits, that's what everyone will do because that's what we did, but if you lose, then everyone's like, you're an idiot.
Yeah. I mean, I remember my first high school job, I sat in a room with all the coaches to like basically present to them what I was about and what I was going to do. And like my presentation was pretty basic. Like we're in high school.
You're bad at everything.
They've never trained. We're talking about cross country and dance athletes all the way up to football players that will probably maybe play Division I football. Like that spectrum is massive. Right. But the football coach looked at me straight in the face and said, are we going to be doing exactly what Husker football does? Because we're not, I don't want it.
Exactly.
Sure, I'll do exactly what Coach Dobson does, and you can just bring in the body bags, and we can just carry them out on those.
Yeah.
No, it's because like this is a completely different population at a completely different level. We're talking about at the time like elite level Big 12 football players.
Yeah,
I'm not talking about Class A high school players. Like that's not the same.
Yeah,
but it needed to be very specific to Nebraska football.
But see, that's a situation that people find themselves in. It's like, well, this team won the conference championship last year. So if we're not doing what they're doing, then we're getting worse. than them. Like, or we're never going to catch them. It's like, well, yeah, maybe you're right, but maybe you're wrong too. You know, it's like, then it's a real difficult deal because it's like, yeah, you're right. This team is winning. So if people win, it's like, well, then we have to do that. Well, that is not the case at all, because your athletes are not their athletes, and same thing.
You need good players to win championships.
Right.
That's all there is to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to get into that stuff. We're going to be here all night.
Anyway, so we can end with specificity.
Okay.
Nick
I think,
right, but
what's that?
So Nick is right, but like I said, it'll just keep rearing its head no matter how.
Oh yeah, there's no squashing this bug.
You just repackage it and give it back to him.
Yeah, you just have to figure out how to sell it differently. You know, the marketing just gets refined over the years. All right, let's wrap this thing up.
Just jump on the bandwagon, you know?
I refuse. I think next week we'll talk through technique in general and why it's important.
Are we ending with books this evening?
Yeah.
Good memory.
What's yours?
Wait, hold on. Are we talking strength and conditioning books?
No,
Or just
whatever you want.
I think any book you want to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
There's so many, but like the book that's impacted me the most, and probably, well, in the most recently, like the last couple of years, has been Death by Meeting. And I know by Patrick Lencioni, and he's got a ton of books. Like The Carpenter is really good. He's got a bunch of books, and they're all easy to read. They tell a story, but all the pieces that he's trying to get to with the topic are within the story, right? So it's fast read, easy read, and then you finish the last few chapters with pulling it all together. But basically, the reason why Death by Meeting was so influential for me is because I was leading a ton of meetings, and I hated them. I was leading them, and so not that, like, we had meetings. The three of us had meetings, but we talked
never official.
They were very informal, right? Yeah. And so now I was trying to lead these meetings with a staff of 10, and it, like I said, it was very hard. The meetings were very hard for me to sit through. So after I read that book, like understanding how to organize a meeting, and you could do this just with general topics, talking to just one-on-one, conversation as well, but how to organize those meetings, how to prioritize what you need throughout the year, what you need throughout the quarter or the months or the semester, however you want it to be, and just lay it all out and be very concise with what you're doing. So it's not just a bunch of wasted time. Is why I really enjoyed that book. So.
I'm going to add to that. So when I knew that book I'd heard about that book for a long time, and I wanted to read it, but I kept putting it off. But I assumed that the message from the book was going to be that all meetings are stupid and you should never meet. So like that was like kind of my head. Like anytime I was like, oh, let's have a meeting. I'm like, no, I don't want to have a meeting. But that book was good because it's like, no, meetings aren't stupid. It's just like bad meetings are stupid. So here's a better way to like do them. And here's how you can plan or periodize your meetings basically. But yeah, it's a good book.
And now when I sit through a stupid meeting, I'm just like, should have read the freaking book. They should have read the book.
What about you, Nick?
Love it. That's a hard question. But I would say one book that I like and would probably recommend to people would be one that was actually gifted to me by Logan when I was at UNO, The Slight Edge.
Oh yeah.
You kind of get the theme of it as you're like reading it. But to me, it's just about always doing something daily that like helps you like progress towards whatever your goal or dream, whatever it might be, like whatever you want to progress towards is like, no matter how small it is, it's like, just do like one thing. Like some days you'll probably be more productive than others and you'll do more, But if you just keep plugging away and you have it laid out, you have your goal written down, whatever your process is, the whole thing you can get into if you want to talk about the mental side of things later on. But like, whatever your dream is, like if you're just doing something every day and doing something to like build yourself to that thing, then that's going to compound and get you there faster than someone who's sporadically doing something. So I just kind of harps on like, make sure you know what you want, work daily towards what you want, and kind of, if you're not progressing towards it, you're regressing backwards from it. So always working for something. So I really liked that one. It kind of showed me the power of like just even doing something simple each day.
I forgot about that book. That is a good book.
I need to read that. I need to read that.
Funny enough, Jeff Olson is my father-in-law's name.
Oh yeah,
different guy though.
I wish he would have wrote the book.
Oh God.
That's a good. I forgot about that book.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of books I could go into, but
yeah, I know. I think mine. So it's not about coaching, but it's called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. So it's different because he's an author. So he has that book, and then Turning Pro. They're both like 110 pages, so super short. But I think through that, like he talks about, his big thing is like the only way to get where you want to go is to put your, like he has a new book out. It's called Put Your Ass Where Your Heart Wants to Be. So it's like, if you want something, like you have to, he says, if you want to write, you have to sit in front of the computer. If you want to, and I think, and then he said, like, if you want to paint, you have to sit in front of the easel. So he's more of like creative, artistic type. But I think it relates to coaching too, because it's like, if you want to, like people call you, how do I get into this? And it's like, well, you have to go there and just be there. And I think like through like his books, it shows like the power of like routine and doing something every day, like kind of building off what you were saying too, Nick. But he talks about like, like the best writers, like they write every day. It doesn't matter if it's Christmas or their birthday, but like they get it and they sit in front of the computer. And like and I think that is super important. It's like, and that relates to like training, all the things that we talk about too. But I love that it's from a little bit different angle, because like it's amazing what will happen if you just do it every day. And like, like you said, it's like some days it might be crappy. Like if you want to write, it's like you might not write anything someday, but the important thing is that you sat down and like committed to doing it for that time. And I think there's a lot of power in that. And I love his books, and like he's a good follow on social media too, but he's just real unique. And like the book Turning Pro, which is what I would read after that, like he talks about like he has like a list in that book of like, here's what professionals do, here's what amateurs do. And it's just cut and dry and like just punches you right in the face. And it's just the truth. Like it just, I love his books. But yeah, that's one I'd recommend.
Have you heard or like read that study of the photography class, or heard that like story?
I don't know, maybe.
It's like I can't remember. I don't know many of the details, but it's like a photography class, and they split it into two groups, and like they all had to submit like a final project picture. And like one group was like, you have to take a certain amount of photos each day to get to your final project. And then the other group was like, you don't have to take any photos at all, but you have to take one perfect photo. And they found out the quality of the photos from the group that just took photos every day was just so much better than the group that only took like one photo
right
through the semester.
Yeah, that's cool. I don't know. I don't think I've ever heard of that, but yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I can't remember where I heard. I'll have to do some digging on that one, but I'll look it up.
Well, the guy that I recommend, he always tells a story too. Like it's somebody else who writes, and he said that like her routine, or she has a routine of like she gets up really early in the morning and goes to the gym, and like people are amazed about like her discipline of going to the gym or whatever. And she says like, my routine isn't successful because I go to the gym. My routine is successful because I get out of bed, put my clothes on, and go get ready for the taxi. She's like, once I've done that, then I know that like I've done what I'm supposed to do that day. Because like it's way easier to just stay in bed or like hit snooze or like not go get in the cab. And it's like, so they don't like judge them, like, and it's back to like the whole thing of like they don't judge themselves by like the output. So like if they write something and nobody reads it, they don't care. But it's like as long as they sat down and did it. Like that guy's story is like he wrote like he like traveled around writing whatever, but he didn't get a book published until he was like 40. So like he had written like, I think he said he wrote like 15 novels or something before he got one published. But he's like, if I didn't have, like he had a video on his Instagram where he showed like all his boxes of like, yeah, these are all the novels that have been rejected. And it's like dozens of them. But he's like, but I just showed up. And then one day, like one got accepted and that's it. It's crazy when you think about it like that. And but I think it relates real well to like coaching and like athletes and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So yeah, I like doing the books at the end. I think that's good. So our 3 books were Logan's was Oh yeah, Death by Meeting, Patrick Lencioni, Slight Edge by Jeff
Slight
Olson.
Edge, Jeff Olson.
Yep. And then War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. I'll put those in the, I'll put links to those in this. That'll be good.
There you go.
All right.
None of those had anything to, well,
that's the best part.
Training. They all had something to do with training, but they were not about training.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, you know, it's interesting. Because we could have sat in here and said, oh yeah, like, you know.
Would you guys say those are like your favorite books?
No, I just said,
I don't know.
I wouldn't say my favorite. I just said like most influential recently.
I was gonna say it's not my favorite. We should do favorite books next week.
Okay.
Favorite books of like all time?
Yeah. That's a hard question, but you know,
That's
maybe like favorite of where you're at right now. That can change.
True. We can do that. I like doing it. We'll keep doing this though.
Okay.
Well, let's do this. Let's do favorite books for people looking to get into the profession.
Okay.
Because I think the books I read when I was coming up are way different than the books I read now.
Right. Yeah. So we'll do that next week. All right. All right. Thank you.